Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Sun, President of Yale Club of Beijing. It's my honor to welcome you all, both here in person and those joining us online. Today, we are very fortunate to have four distinguished Yale and Columbia alumni with us, talking about how education for sustainable development responds to rural crisis. Our panelists are Gordon Jabal, former Associate Dean for International Engagement at the Yale School of Environment. Welcome.
Very pleased to be here.
And Emmanuel Pastrak, President of the Asia Institute. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And our panelists in person, Pat Yang, President and co-founder of Zigen Fund. Welcome. And our moderate April Hu, Chair of the Yale International Alliance. Welcome all panelists. Now the stage is yours, April.
Thank you very much, Helen, who is the president of Yale Beijing, as she just mentioned, Yale Club Beijing. And today, we are all here together, and I was just referring to the moon. The moon is a round moon, in Chinese that's yuan, and we are all here, 也就是缘分 in the Chinese word, which is we are, for whatever reason, brought together in a round way. And it links to this idea of also sustainability. I hope that's not too big a stretch of a metaphor, but it's also about a cycle. And I'm extremely honored, of course, who is making this happen is because of the host. Host is Yale Center Beijing and also Yale Club Beijing, and ourselves as a part of Yale International Alliance as an international alumni group. So today we're, as mentioned by Helen, very honored to have several panelists join us from both here in China, Pat Yang, and also coming in from New Haven, Professor Gordon Jabal, and also from Tokyo, Emmanuel Pastrak. The format of today is that each member will be presenting 15 minutes of a comment about how education for sustainable development addresses the rural crises with case studies from China, Haiti, Japan. And after each one of them will present 15 minutes talk, they're about 10, 15, but I'll be the timekeeper that it won't be longer than 15. Then the panelists will then discuss amongst themselves what they just shared. And I had promised Professor Jabal yesterday that we will definitely stick with our 13 minutes question and answer. This is it's a discussion, it's a round table, yuan. And the purpose is really for cross dialogue. So not only those who are here tonight, but also those who are online. I know many have gotten up really early on the West Coast, even 3 in the morning. There's 6 on the East Coast, and also those in Europe, and also many, I think, also in Asia. So thank you very much all for coming to join in. And I actually welcome you to think of this as actually a lecture being taught by Professor Jabal. He teaches an undergraduate class to the a freshman seminar at Yale. And I'd love you to think of this as his course, where he will open the program and then talk about some of the overarching issues of sustainable development, and then we bring in the domain experts. Such as about other case studies. So I wanted to just highlight the definition of what is the rural crisis. And the rural crisis right now is actually a result of the urban crisis. And the rural crisis is a compilation of poverty, of lack of services, poor education, causing an enormous drain and also continuous critical cycle of never quite able to come out of a very poor base. But this is actually also an interesting opportunity, and I think Professor Jabal may talk about is sometimes when you have a crisis, you do have an opportunity to actually build back better. That we talked about yesterday, and that could also serve as a cushion or a sponge to absorb some of the crises that we are seeing more and more of in today. So with that as a teaser, I'm delighted to introduce, actually Gordon, do you want to call you Gordon or Professor Jabal, but over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, April. Well, I'm very pleased to be here, and I thank April and the Beijing Center for hosting, and the Yale Club of Beijing. Yale has an extensive network of alumni all over the world, and we love it when we're in contact with all of you, and especially when you come back to New Haven to see us. So I hope you will. I thought I would first start off by introducing myself a little bit. I taught at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, which changed its name a few years ago to the Yale School of the Environment, for many, many years. And I did a lot of teaching and a lot of administration. My favorite part, if any teachers are listening, professors are listening, was not the administrators and the professors. I love the students. The students are just so inquisitive, and since I'm getting to set the tone a little bit for this talk, I love discussion. So that's why April made that mention, that hopefully we can quickly get to the discussion. I want to hear your thoughts, and then I love to we'll love to reflect on them. I wanted to start off a little bit by saying I have a very interesting relationship with China. In the 1990s, long ago, I was in China every year, sometimes twice a year, because I really wanted the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies at the time to have some relationship with China. At that time, we had very few Chinese students and very few researchers there. And Yale, as many of you know, has a very rich relationship with China, and I thought that our school, our part of Yale, was missing out. There was a doctoral student at the time, Song Ya-ji, who was studying forestry in Fujian province, and I visited with him in China many times, and I was lucky enough to get far and wide. I've been up to the northeast, to Harbin, where there's a well-known forestry university. I've been to Beijing Forestry University, I've been to Nanjing Forestry University, I've been out to Gansu province, and I even was lucky enough to take a boat from Chongqing down the river before the dam was completed. So I got to see the dam in more or less its wild state before it was dammed up. I haven't been back to China recently. It's my great regret not to have been there. I did see China. The 90s, those of you that might remember, was in a glorious age for China. I remember one of the phrases was, there are not enough lights in Beijing. And so everybody was putting up lights and Christmas tree lights and lights all over the restaurants. And everybody was beginning to come out, and really the economic boom of that period was starting. So that's how I remember China. I've obviously kept up with China through photographs and colleagues, and I know it's a huge, thriving economy. And one of the visits I made, and I'm not going to get the name exactly right, but I was in Shanghai. I'm going to call it the History Museum. I'm not sure what's right. And I remember seeing an artifact there that dates back, I think it was 6,000 years, and it impressed upon me the fact that the cultural heritage of China is long and glorious, and so it's fun to reconnect. April, thank you for bringing us together. I wanted to, since I'm talking about Haiti, I thought I'd start with my story of Haiti. In 2010, some students from the Environment School and from the School of Public Health at Yale walked into my office and said, there's just been a big earthquake there. We know nothing about Haiti. Will you teach a course on Haiti? And I said, well, I'd be glad to teach a course, but I also know nothing about Haiti. We have to find someone at the university that knows something about Haiti. And we were lucky enough to find a doctor, medical doctor, Gary Desir, who had been born in Haiti, raised in Haiti, had lots of family there, but had done his college and medical training in the United States. So we ran for 5 years a course in the spring where we studied Haiti, and we went down in Yale's spring break, which is in March, to Haiti for 5 years. And we toured around. We were tourists, but we also interacted with L'Hôpital Albert Schweitzer, a private hospital in rural Haiti. And this is my introduction to Haiti. So those of you that know, 2010 was quite a cataclysmic year for Haiti. In January, it's just about whatever number of years, 15 years ago exactly, next month, there was this cataclysmic earthquake in the populated areas near the capital, Port-au-Prince, that killed maybe, of course the numbers vary, but they're saying at least 100,000 people, and maybe 800,000 people, or maybe 1 million people were left homeless because of buildings that had collapsed. Just to put that in perspective, the big tsunami in the Indian Ocean that killed so many people in 2004 is thought to have killed about 230,000 people. This mainly in Aceh province, I believe in Indonesia. Many of you will remember it or can study it. So 100,000 people dying very short time in one little area compared to the 200,000 some people that died over much of a province and over much of the northern Indian Ocean. I'm just using it to compare what a terrible disaster that was. Then about both of these cases, I'm going to talk a little bit about about 10 months later, in a different part of Haiti, unrelated to the earthquake, there was a release of human waste from a UN peacekeeping force center, and the waste entered into a tributary that got into the main river of Haiti, the Artibonite, and unbeknownst to anybody at the time, some people from the PAL at the time, some of the soldiers from PAL had recently come in contact with cholera, and cholera was in the waste, got into the river, and there was a big introduction of cholera to Haiti. The interesting story there is that cholera was not present in Haiti at the time, so this was a real insult to the health of the country. Only, I would say only, but 10,000 people died, and it's thought that maybe 800,000 people got sick. Cholera is not a terribly dangerous disease. It's scary. No one wants to get it. It's basically diarrhea. But if you live in rural areas, and our topic is rural today, and you don't have good medical care, and you don't get to the hospital quickly, you can die of dehydration and the loss of salts. But if you can get to the hospital, or if you can get some water, you can weather the storm and get through the disease and come out fine. There is a vaccine which is now introduced into Haiti, so it's a more of a chronic disease. So those are the two crises I wanted to talk about briefly. One is very rural, and I won't spend too much time on it. And the one in the rural, one is very urban. The earthquake was really in an urban area, which is why there was so much destruction. It's called the Haiti earthquake. It actually did not affect all of Haiti. It affected a very small area, and all the people that died were in the populated area, unfortunately. It did affect the rural areas because many people who were homeless did flee back to their relatives or families or friends in the rural areas. So the rural areas suddenly had an increase of some numbers of people, although most of the people were in kept cities. The massive problem, so the two topics I wanted to talk about with sustainable development, I want to introduce here, and then we'll go back to both the earthquake and cholera. In a crisis situation, sustainable development is important before the crisis happens and after the crisis happens. So before the crisis happens, we're now using the word resilient. We're trying to make ourselves more resilient to what the future might bring. So in the climate change community, we're talking about being resilient to climate change, which for instance might involve planting mangroves along the shoreline, so as storms increase and there are waves that come on shore, what they first hit is not human civilization, but a buffer of mangroves and other organisms that might buffer the energy of the storm. So that's building resilience. It's sometimes done by building dams or levees. and we often use a very physical approach to it, although there can be a strong educational component too. For instance, the United States, we constantly get advice to pack the crisis bag. So we're all supposed to have in our homes some water, some medical equipment, something to wrap ourselves to stay warm, so that if, for instance, our house were destroyed or burned, we would be able to protect ourselves out in the more rugged environment. The second time that sustainable development becomes important is after the crisis, and April alluded to this. So we often say now, out of disaster there is opportunity, and the opportunity in a sustainable development frame is the following: when you start to build back, let me use as an example a flood along a river or at the mouth of a river. If there's a flood and the housing is destroyed, this happened in New York City, a storm we had many years ago called Superstorm Sandy. There were many houses in Staten Island, part of New York City, that were flooded and destroyed. So when the people that lived in those houses think about what they do after the flooding, the natural instinct is to recreate what they had before. I think it's a human instinct. That's what you remember. It's what you live. You want to overcome the disaster, and you build back the way it was. The sustainable development argument has us the following, and the words were mentioned: build back better. Take this opportunity of this disaster and say, how could we build back in a way that makes us now in the future more resilient? So this is now, for instance, in the floodplain of a river and the houses get washed away. Instead of building back there, why not move those people to higher ground, dedicate the lowlands to flooding, maybe you could turn it into a park. There's a famous case in Brazil, in Curitiba, where they took a lot of money and moved people out of the floodplain and let the river just wash over once or twice a year, and developed a very fertile land, and that was a wonderful park for everybody to enjoy. You can do that and then move the people to safer ground so that the flooding that impacted them is less likely to affect them the next time the river rises. So that's an example of building back better. So in the earthquake, the main way of being resilient to an earthquake is in the building code. I don't have to really talk much about earthquakes to you. China has earthquakes regularly. I think almost every year there's an earthquake. So your culture, your building codes have adapted to the idea of an earthquake. In Haiti, the earthquake happens very rarely. The buildings were not built up to code. And so this is one way of becoming more resilient in the future, which is now people in Haiti should pay more attention to building. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, earthquakes are relatively rare in Haiti. The bigger problem in Haiti, by far the biggest, is hurricanes, and those are getting stronger. And Haiti's going to have to figure out, both in an urban setting and a rural setting, how to prepare for hurricanes. So, in the second sense, as Haiti builds back, as the urban area builds back, they are talking about developing building codes. The problem is, and this is a problem generically in rural areas, the people are very poor. In Haiti, even in the urban areas, the people are very poor. So building back a house that was destroyed by the earthquake in the capital city, by using reinforcing structures, better concrete mixtures, and so on and so forth, costs money, and a lot of the people don't have it. So I'm afraid that a lot of the houses will be built back not very improved, but fortunately, I don't want to jinx the Haitians. Fortunately, there shouldn't be another big earthquake in Haiti for quite a long time. I think the previous big one was in the 1920s, so maybe they'll get away with another 100 years. In the cholera sense, let's look at sustainable development before and after the cholera. So Haiti has, in the rural areas, as many rural areas, has relatively poor sanitation structures. Many people have to walk quite a ways to get water from springs or wells that are in larger cities. Often, of course, it's the girls and the women that have to do this walking, sometimes quite a bit every day to get the water. So in terms of building resilience, by building a more robust water delivery system and water sanitation system, Haiti could generally make itself a healthier rural society. After cholera, this became obvious, or more obvious, I should say, and the success story of cholera is only 10,000 people died over 3 years, and actually Haiti was able to reduce the cholera incidence very, very low because they used education in the rural areas. So after a crisis, this is when education, which is one of the topics today, becomes very important. People generally, their attention is on the disaster. They see dramatically what the effect of the disaster has been, and I think it's a time when we can do a lot of education, and in Haiti, a lot of education's gone on. So one of the biggest problems that was discovered is there are a lot of people in rural Haiti that live too far from medical care. As I said, it's easy to fight cholera if you can get to a hospital, if you can rehydrate. But if you can't get there for 2 days or whatever, you're going to die from dehydration and loss of salts. So there's a lot going on in Haiti now to, that looks like the signal to time to stop talking. Okay, I think I put a lot of ideas on the table. I'm looking forward to hearing what my colleagues have to say and then getting back into conversation. Thank you, April, for having me.
Thank you, Professor Jabal. And now for the sake of time, we'll now move to the next panelist, Pat Yang, who will have a set of slides. And yes, and by introduction, Pat Yang, she is a domain expert in China, having been here, well, I'm going to pass this on and have her introduce her story. And again, I think the purpose, just to remind, the purpose of this webinar is really to bring ideas from different parts of the world to address some global problems. So delighted to have a domain expert here from China.
Okay, friends, yeah, it's a great pleasure and also honor to be in this beautiful Beijing and to share my experiences working in the rural China for the past 30 years. For the 30 years working in China, I have all witnessed the great tremendous change in China. And the first is unprecedented historically, the Great Migration. Large number of the people migrate from the rural area to the cities as a higher labor. And in the meantime, the modernization, urbanization, and the industrialization has the greatest impact in the China development. Especially through these changes, and the people's life have been greatly improved. In the meantime, I think it's very important we know that the eradication of the poverty in China is really the huge success for developing countries. But among all those good news, in the meantime, I think China has paid great prices, and especially from the rural area. And the first price China paid is the degradation of the environment. Okay, first, the soil and the water and the air are heavily polluted. And also the biodiversity is losing rapidly. And then the food security, and we're facing a lot of the hassles. Yeah. So environmental degradation. Another important thing is China with thousands of years of diverse culture, the local culture and also the traditional culture has been diminished rapidly, and instead is the city consumerism. Yeah. I think losing of the traditional culture and the local culture, and also degradation of the environment, is facing the rural area severely, even up to now. And in the meantime, because all the young people left to the cities, and the many rural areas left with the older people and left behind children. Yeah. So China, the government has promote the revitalize the rural area. It has been a very urgent issue. But what about the future of the rural area is the greatest challenge to the people in China and to the government. Okay, talking about the sustainable development, and since 1992, and through the numerous international conferences, has reached a consensus that for sustainable development, economic development is not enough. Okay, not only economic development. In the meantime, you have to consider about the environmental protection, and also the cultural diversity and the social equality. So the four pillars working together influence each other and have balanced development, then we'll have a sustainable development. No one can left behind. Okay, it's all equally important because we always hear about economic is the basic. Only economic development you can develop the other things. I think this is very much not updated. I think it's backwards notion. Yeah. And now it's four pillars working together. Then we'll have the sustainable development. And in the meantime, United Nations and propose the 17 development goals, and from 2015 to 2030, not too many years left. But among the 17 goals, and only 16 goals has been achieved. And then 1/3 of the goals stagnant. Another 1/3 of the goals even backwards. Okay. So for the four pillars of the sustainable development, and every pillar is facing a lot of risk right now. So we are in an uncertain, changing world. Yeah. We are facing a lot of challenges, but in the meantime, of course, there are a lot of opportunities. Then, what should we do? Yeah, facing this uncertainty, facing this risk, what can we do? I think in 1992, the United Nations held the Rio, the Environment and the Development Conference, and proposed that education is the key to maintain a sustainable development society. Education key, but we need a new kind of education. Okay. Traditional education is to learn a skill and to find a job, but that's not enough right now because we are facing tremendous risk right now. Okay, so United Nations proposed in the 21st Century Agenda officially proposed to promote education for sustainable development. And in China, I just proposed ecological civilization and education for sustainable development, which is that to educate everyone from the early infant to the older people like me, okay, and has the chance to acquire the major issues facing us right now. Among these four pillars framework, such as climate change, such as biodiversity losing, such as inequality within the country and among the countries, okay? And such as the huge pollution, the soil, the water, and the diminishing of our natural resources, about the issue of poverty. So everyone should acquire the knowledge and attitude and skill about these urgent issues. Without the consensus, without the knowledge of everybody, then it's difficult to achieve sustainable development. Okay, China also in 2012 already promote 5 pillars, 5-pillar development, and this is a national policy. Look at that; it's very similar to the 4 pillars of the sustainable development. Also, you see, it's economic and also cultural and society, but it also has a political. Yeah, I think this is very comprehensive. and very similar to the international accepted the 4 pillars of the development. And China also has promoted the green mountain and the green river, equally important as the silver mountain, silver river, and the gold mountain. Yeah. So we call this a 2 mountain theory. Yeah. So take a look, there is very much emphasis in the environment and also about the nature. Yeah. It's not only just economic growth. Okay, what I have been, doing and participating is trying to promote education for sustainable development in the rural area for the past 30 years. And the project that I've been, involving is to systematically, through the education, to integrate the ESD into the rural development in the area of the basic education, vocational education, and also in the adult education. So I'm saying that it's through the systematic approach, and the first order project has to have a basic research phase. And the second, then we have to develop a set of the training programs. It's under the framework of the ESD. And in the meantime, then we establish the Green Eco Schools and the Green Eco Village to integrate environmental protection, integrate cultural representation into the school curriculum. And then the last thing is through all these experiences and to summarize the lesson learned and the good story to tell, and we hold the conferences, international conferences, and the local conferences to address the public awareness and the national policy, government policy advices. And this is the courses we develop, altogether 8 courses, and to the different learners. First is to the next year's school teachers, and the second one is for the rural working leaders, and the third is for the NGO leaderships. And also we have for the women's leadership training program. It's all under the framework of the sustainable development. This is the framework of the school. I participate in building more than 100 rural schools around the country. So we have the program for the teachers, for the students, for the parents, and also for the schools. Yeah, with a detail, we've got the time constraint. I don't have to really go into it. Yeah. And also for the green eco villages. And those are the photos. Yeah, so the teachers will collaborate with the Beijing University, Beijing Normal University, Agricultural University, and with the local people and teachers and the school principals together to develop the training program. All those are the participants from all different schools. For the teachers to participate, right now we have trained more than 5,000 rural teachers, and they all have the knowledge and the attitude about the environmental protection and also about the cultural reservation. And those are and in the schools, the students and the teachers participate together to plant the trees, to collect the garbages, and for the division of the garbage. And the school was the students, and they have this environmental protection high-writing newspapers. And those are the teachers working together to pull out the weeds of the farming land and the rice field. In the meantime, we're talking about the development and the culture. So the development, the purpose of the development and the mission of the development actually is to raise the wisdom, compassion, ethics, and the spiritual. So in order to do this, environment, culture is really the most important. So in the meantime, so we develop the local culture and through all different schools, especially the place I work a lot of other minority groups, with Miao minority, with the Dong minority, especially in Guizhou, even in one area, they have more than 60 different minority groups. It's very, very rich in culture, but diminished rapidly. So we asked, this grandfather come over to talk about the history of the village. And here is long lost guitar. And so we had the local artists come over to teach the students and to play the local guitar and dancing together. And I took this picture when I was in the mountain of Yunnan. Yeah. So the students, the parents, the villagers all dancing together under the bright moon, and we revitalize their local culture. And here is the grandmother and teaching his granddaughter, and this the best practice of the farming fish and rice together. It's a very ecological, traditional, long-lasting the farming methods. So those are the parties I have been participating and to revitalize, to reserve, the local culture and make it committed to sustainable development. So, but I'm talking about all the good things. But in the meantime, we will also encounter a lot of difficulties. Okay? Because sustainable development, you advocate for to be environmental conscious, to be safe, to be conserve energy. But now the main culture is to promote consumerism. Okay? Yeah. So this is a great conflict, but we encounter a lot of difficulties too. Yeah. And the second, in the school, and the emphasis on the school for the textbooks, the environmental courses, and also about the local culture is not in the school curriculum. It's not in the evaluation of the performance of the teachers. Okay? So it's difficult to really to integrate this kind of lessons into the school curriculum. And in many schools, it's teacher-centered teaching methods. Okay? And the students are ready to respond. Many curriculum is not relevant to the local. So we have to face all those obstacles and to convince the local people to adopt this kind of ESD. It's difficult. We have to develop the programs. We have to convince the local government. We have to working with the schools. In the meantime, we have to come up with the funding. Yeah. But I think this is important and this is lacking. Yeah. This is really facing the country's development.
1 minute.
Okay, last one. I will quote Chairman Mao Zedong said, and he said, the thousands will billow and the sweat spring through in the spring breeze. Billions of the Chinese people was the sage king was Yale and Sun. Okay, follow that. If everyone in China, they all have the environmental knowledge and consciousness and taking action. Okay. Everyone in China, and they respect the elderly and the caring for the young. Okay. And everyone share the value of working in harmony with the nature and as one of the nature. Okay. And also everyone is to participate and conserve their own culture, respect their own culture, and also participate in building their village, their society into a sustainable development model. And in this case, China will be the greatest country and to let the people forward to build a beautiful, sustainable future. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Yang Lao Shi. Sorry, and appreciate the time limit. And now we will have Emmanuel calling in from Tokyo to share your experience from a very, very important part of East Asia. So over to you, Manuel.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I don't have a ready case study, but I did work with local government in Korea, in South Korea, for several years as advisor to the governor of Chungnam province, which included education and rural policy. So I had some experience with the actual situation. And in Japan, there have been several rural communities that I have participated in agricultural events with over the last 3 years that I've been back here. So I have some idea of the issues involved, but I will have to talk in a broader, bird's eye view manner about the issue. In Japan, there's been immense pressure to reduce the amount of domestic farming, which is related to current trade negotiations and past ones. And many Japanese are deeply worried regarding food security at the very low level of supply, especially for rice, but in other fields as well, other products. The aging population overall, especially in rural areas, is also a major issue, as is the general discouragement in popular culture of agriculture as a career, which has led to a breakdown of basic inherited knowledge about farming techniques and daily life in rural areas and best practices that's made it very hard, even with considerable efforts, to revive farming communities. And moreover, the consolidation of distribution, retail, has meant that a lot of family businesses in rural areas have been reduced, and rural communities tend to depend on large discount stores, as is true in the United States and elsewhere, for opportunities to work. And there's not the sort of economic or cultural diversity that we had, although this is not true for all rural areas in Japan. Moreover, young people tend to go to the cities in order to get a college education. And as I know from the one farming community I've interacted with, Genkimura, which is in a rural area outside of Tokyo, most of them tend to leave. So we have an aging population. And as you know, becoming a farmer is not something you just do overnight. I was advised by a friend of mine, if I want to go back to being a farmer, I should start doing it before I turn 50. Now it's already too late, because if you try and do it later, you can't really bend down. Your knees and your back is not accustomed to what's required to actually be a farmer. But I really wanted to talk today about what I think the most important study as we look at these issues of education and agricultural rural communities, and that is the study by Franklin King, which was published in 1911, called Farmers of 40 Centuries, Permanent Agriculture in China, Korea, and Japan. Now, Franklin King, who was a professor of agriculture at University of Minnesota, visited China, Korea, and Japan at the beginning of the 20th century, and he describes in detail the remarkable best practices for organic farming that he saw in Asia, the incredible commitment to preserving soil, water, traditional irrigation, and long-term planning that was really made agriculture in East Asia the best in the world at that time. He describes the achievements, and at that time, he advocated that the Eastern model should be what should be followed in the West. Needless to say, the advent of artificial fertilizers and then other developments, including mechanization, took us in a separate direction. However, I find this book, which has been translated into Chinese, into Japanese and Korean, to be extremely valuable and give us a hint of what Asia itself holds. And I would take this back to the Confucian ideas about ecology and economy, which place an emphasis, and we can see this from the Song Dynasty through the Qing Dynasty, but especially in the Song Dynasty, on long-term agricultural development as the center of the economy. And the government, which was also run with long-term goals, not 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, but century-long projects for irrigation, land management, maintenance of soil, and other programs, which were extremely sophisticated and probably the most sophisticated in the world at the time. That emphasis on ecology as central to the concept of economics is what made Asia the center of the world economy up until really the middle of the 19th century, something which we tend not to be aware of. But as the Opium Wars, the whole development of the United States and Great Britain, especially, was related to the transfer of wealth from China, essentially. To some degree, India and Bangladesh as well, and other countries. But China had enormous wealth, as did East Asia. I'd also add that the educated intellectuals in government and elsewhere in China, Japan, and Korea maintained their family farms. They made their rural homes the center for their lives. Although they went to the big cities, into the civil service, they came back home, and that was very much a part of their identity and of their long-term family economic and cultural investment in land and in the local economy. So if we're serious going forward about reversing the extreme forms of urbanization and the resulting crisis for rural communities in China and in Korea, South Korea, and Japan as well, the lack of resources, the cultural and institutional foundations that are breaking down, the need to restore a culture of sustainability, we really need to reconsider what exactly growth is, what development is, and whether the Western model as it exists now, I wouldn't say it's the whole Western tradition, since the Western philosophical, political, economic system is complex, but it's become somewhat simplistic over the last, say, 60 years, and especially the last 30 years. So whether this Western model, as opposed to the original Eastern one, is really universal. Is it really what we need looking at the future, especially in response to the challenges of climate change, which are just only starting to kick in. As global urbanization accelerates, the rural crisis will have a lot of demands to be made, that will be made of us. And I would say that especially in the case of China, that the Neo-Confucian, the Jushi school of Confucian teaching, put tremendous emphasis on long-term ecological sustainability. And that maybe that's what my conclusion would be, that if we're looking for an answer for China in terms of what the education in China should be, that it's not simply translating what we Western scholars have written on the subject, but it actually is rediscovering China's original, or for that matter, Korean, Japan's original long-term 100-year, 200-year planning for agricultural production with an emphasis on irrigation, water quality, soil quality, and making agriculture the center of the economic system. I much appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to the rest of our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And you had very much 11 minutes, so that's great. Thank you. So we got back a little bit of time from our late start. As I had mentioned, and first of all, thank you so much for your comments, and I hope all of you really enjoyed. Wow, in the last half an hour, we went from Haiti to China to Japan. We covered things that happened very recently, all the way to some historical background, and overall, I feel there is a sense of a very challenging situation for the rural area, but also there's some calls for some hope about possible learning from the East and the West, for some particularly to be more patient and to come up as Emmanuel suggested 100 to 200 year planning, which actually in America, there are American Indians who actually say they would, even planting a tree or clearing a pasture, they think, what will happen to the next 7 generations, which at that time, with the general lifespan about 30, 40, is about 200, 250 years. So that seems like a natural span of what kind of horizons we're looking at. Okay, so now actually, more importantly is, this is now we have about 10 minutes, is just for Professor Jabal and Teacher Yang Lao Shi and Emmanuel. Maybe would you like to ask each other questions or reflect on some of the points that you'd like to highlight? And I'm also now fielding any questions. Be ready for asking questions, because I'll be asking you questions. And those who are online, can you just turn on the video for the online? I just have a sense that to wave to our online community. Oh, they all, okay. It's a quiet community. They're not turning on their screens. A very, oh, there's one. Hi, hello. All right, so I do know, I think there are a couple of dozens out there. So, but regardless, please feel free to send in, to text in your question. And if you wish to, if you turn on the screen, we could actually turn on the mic. You could even ask your question in person. Okay, so over to you. Now I'll ask Professor Jabal, why don't you start off? Run this like your webinar, okay? We're sitting in your seminar right now.
Yeah. So thank you to both of my colleagues for their presentations. And I wanted to just focus in on a couple of topics that I think are universal. First of all, this idea that was mentioned of the migration from rural to urban. That is happening all over the world. I was in Bhutan, and the agricultural society there is suffering because all the young people want to go to the cities, and actually a lot of them want to leave the Bhutan and go to Australia, where everything is happening. I think this is a function of the culture that's shown on movies and TVs and TikToks and things like that. The young people are captured by this kind of life. So I wanted to just reinforce that this migration's all over the world, and I wanted to reinforce the latter point, which is that both of you made, which is the rural culture, the culture of agriculture, is portrayed in a poor light these days, again, all over the world. And it's really hard for, say, parents, or in the case of the one photograph from rural China of the grandparent, it's hard for the elders to instill in the younger people the values, the skills, the knowledge that they have. And so then, as was mentioned, the idea of going back and recreating an agricultural class sometime in the future is going to be different. And I think this idea of rural education is vitally important. I don't know, and I'd be curious what you all think of, how do we actually get younger people to either stay in the rural areas, learn the skills, the organic skills, the sustainable skills of their elder generation, or even get some people such as those that are sitting in the seminar right now, some of the younger people, in Emmanuel's sense, the pre-50 people, to go back to the farms and take up and learn farming. I don't know how we do that. I wonder if anyone has any ideas. I think education maybe is the only way we have, but I don't know how we do this. But I'd be curious to hear what the other speakers have, and maybe when we get to the audience, what ideas they have.
Can I reply on the...
Sure, absolutely. Jump in if you wish to. Yep.
My name is Will. I'm an educator. I spent the past few times like educating the teenagers and doing exchanges to the rural provinces. I do have like a point because one of my co-founders, we actually had a farm in Anhui province. It's about it's very large. It's about 26,000 acres, so it's massive. The founders and the funding goes from those successful people or businessmen who actually made a fortune and want to trace back their teenage lives, rural lives. So they put the money with the local policy, with the exchange of the policy allows to exchange the farmlands to go to I think they had a loan for 50 or 70 something years. What I found surprisingly is a lot of people actually is going a pursuit of the rural life. For our young generations, or like for me, I'm in my 30s. What our concern is whether we can get a economy balance, if we can earn enough money while enjoying the countryside. And I found myself there is actually a balance between it, because with the transportation, I actually just take a 3-hour train from Shandong province to come here for this meeting, and and the 5G generation of the communication. Especially with we know the sixth generation is on the way with Elon Musk and all the satellites and stuff. It's actually the cost for communication is going to drop significantly, and they can actually earn quite a bit of money while enjoying the low price and the beautiful countryside. So we know a lot of examples like this. It's actually they are actually people are actually trying them in all different places in China. If occasionally or you come back to China, come to China, we can actually show you around. It's actually very interesting. So I think that's actually a balance, because after so many years of the development, during the urban lines, people are actually flowing back to the rural lines, rural places. One thing I find curious, what's blocking this is I think the administration is still thinking that they need more people, more urbanization. So they don't allow the country folks to build their own houses. I mean the houses just like the United States. They are blocking people to do that first. What they're trying to do is through generations of Chinese development, they actually divided the land to millions and millions of individuals. Each individual, for 1 acre of the land, there's maybe 100 or 200 owners. And that's a big problem for the rural development. So they're trying to find ways to actually centralize the land. And after that, they can let the machines or tourism and all the stuff would be possible without changing the fundamental of this administration, the equalize of the lands.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. What was your name again?
Will.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And that is an interesting reflection from a young man who would like to be staying in the country, but some of the systemic problems of land property rights in China. But okay, what I'm going to do, I'm actually now going to hold questions from the audience. Let's just have the speakers to continue. So sorry, but that was really extremely helpful, Will. But let's come back to Emmanuel and Yang Laoshi. Do you have any comments on Professor Jamal's comment about the universal trend of people who do move, the majority of people do move from the rural to urban, and also how, because the rural life is portrayed, the perception is that it's very hard, and there are a lot of problems that make it very, very difficult to reside in. So any comments?
Talking about the culture, I think culture is very important, but through the culture you educate the people from the young to the old. But now it's internationally and also in China, like the school education, take a look at the content. It's very urban oriented. And very few content is about the rural life, about the rural culture, and about the local culture. Not only in formal education, also in non-formal education. Take a look at the TV. How many programs are about the rural culture? Very few. Okay, yeah. So fundamentally, that's why we need a new kind of education, not those kind of traditional education to find a job, to get rich. Okay? The education, sustainable development education, should know about your local culture, respect the local culture, and also the values and so forth. Yeah. So that's why I advocate for the education for sustainable development with new content, new methods, and a new orientation. Yeah, this I think that's very important. Okay, I'm just answering your questions. Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to have Emmanuel make some comment, and then it'll be open to the floor. Please go ahead, Emmanuel.
Well, I just want to follow up on what Dr. Yang just said, and that is that to create such a sustainable ecological culture and education would be the primary way to do this. It's in a way it's the equivalent of the May 4th movement in reverse. But to do so would require a combination between certain ideas, shall we say, Western or modern ideas, and some traditional ones. So we don't want to go back to foot binding. We don't go back to an oppressive society for women. We don't want to have semi-slave servants, and there are lots of things about traditional China or traditional Japan and Korea that we don't want to go back to. However, there's an enormous amount in that tradition, especially regarding agriculture and sustainability, long-term planning, that we do want, and which can supplement and improve a lot of the general concepts that are used in the West and in a lot of our concepts about development and the betterment of humanity. So I just wanted to suggest that it's a creative process that we're going to have, in case of China or Japan, create a new culture, but that new culture will draw upon some aspects of traditional culture, but probably not all aspects.
Great. Wonderful. A balance, again, we're talking about, again, the cycle, the balance, the round here. And here we have, introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Max, and I'm also an alum for Yale Forestry School. So just going back to Gordon's question, actually I worked in the rural areas for several years after I came back to China. And although what you point out is a general universal trend, however, there are some special cases that I want to point out. There are some pioneer group projects like Yang Laoshi and many others. For example, they are conserving the old seeds, the seeds that can regenerate itself over generations. So without buying the F1 seeds, which cannot regenerate, you have to buy from big agricultural companies. So that is already happening in places like Hangzhou in China. Like the farmers are trading their generations of seeds to keep that genetic variety. And also architects like Wang Shu, he is rebuilding a village in Hangzhou, Wenchun. So for example, he's one of the two most famous architects in China. And he built traditional houses in Wenchun, both modern and traditional, to appeal some tourism attractions and kind of conserve the culture of the community in that village. So I think in that sense, there's some cultural continuation. Also, there are a lot of educational opportunities in many rural places in China. The one I participated just a few years ago was in Yunnan, Jingmaishan. Maybe you've heard of it. It's actually a very new United Nations UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the Bulang people, how they grow tea underneath the forest, underneath the shade of the trees. So they use biological controls, use the spiders and birds to control the pests and diseases. So I think because I searched for pesticide-free tea all over China for many years, and I think that is the most purest form of organic tea that I can find. So after they became a UNESCO site, a lot of tourists went there every year to kind of learn from their traditional wisdom. But that's another problem. It's called mass tourism. So they're coming to the other direction. But I think a lot of other places that you mentioned in Yunnan, Guizhou, a lot of the minority villages, they can start to explore some ecotourism opportunities to start to get some attraction from the internet. Maybe some explorers discover mindset people will travel there and learn from their culture.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your comment and the additional case studies of tying the traditional and the modern. Any comments here?
I fully agree. When we're talking about the cultural diversity for the sustainable development, it's very closely related. But what kind of culture? Like in Chinese culture, finding the food and also look down at the woman, yeah. And talk about it, the woman doesn't have the knowledge is the bad thing. Those kind of culture we should condemn, yeah. But in the meantime, in thousands of years of the culture, a lot of it is very much environmental protection and the conservation and talking about respect the elderly, yeah, in harmony of the society. And in China and in many other cultures as well, we should preserve those kind of culture to make this modernized, make it address the modern developmental issues. I think the culture have a great contribution. It also can create a lot of job opportunity for the agriculture, for the cultural products, for the cultural work. And also like in China, can improve the health with a lot of herb, Chinese herb, Chinese medicine, and it's from the villages, it's sustainable, it's good for the health, and also it's a way of life. There are a lot of elements in the local culture can be preserved. And it's always environmentally friendly, yeah. But we should recover this culture, preserve this culture, make it more relevant to the modern development. Yeah, yeah, which we can all together. That's why I definitely feel education for sustainable development is a very important education reform, yeah. Education revolution, yeah. But right now, haven't really implemented in China.
Thank you, Yang Lao Shi. So, any other questions or comments? I think Professor Javel, you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to make a short comment based on something I think Will said and just was said. There may be an interesting dichotomy between the concept of balance and harmony, which comes through in the Chinese and Asian culture so much, compared to progress, which is sort of the Western idea of constantly moving forward, constantly finding the new ways of doing things. And I think that might bring to the fore some of the topics we're talking about, that we want to rediscover the balance. For instance, living in the rural areas, there's a lower cost of living. You can have a nice house. You don't have to spend so much money. There's not so much hassle. And you can do agriculture. And then with high-speed internet connections, you can connect through streaming and movies to the fast-paced life in the city. I think that may be an interesting way of looking at it. So I want to thank my colleagues for bringing that up, and Will for bringing that up too. That was a nice thought.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for, do you have a question for some comments? Sorry, here? Okay, fine.
Please go ahead. Sorry, I think I just have a quick question. So as Dr. Yang just mentioned, that we need like a new kind of education and that we need to develop the sustainable culture because most things we have currently are urban oriented and that we know little about rural culture. So I think my question is that for people who are living in urban regions and who are not really planning on moving back to the farmland in the short term, like not being that pioneer, but like how do we support this initiative? Or let me put it in another way, it's like how do we involve a wider audience in the society to kind of support what we're currently doing as a pioneer?
I see the rural culture. I think the rural culture is not any different from the urban culture. Yeah, because like the values, okay, to be part of the nature and to be one of the nature is universal. It's not only urban people, they don't have to do that. That's not true. But especially in China, thousands of years, the Chinese culture actually is the agricultural culture, right? Yeah, the people doing the farming work, and most of the people the work is as a farmers. Yeah. So in China, even the people living in the city, but their roots, their parents, and also their ancestors, they're from China. In China, all those points, all those good stories, it's all about the rural area. So I don't think we should separate from the rural culture and the urban culture. It's all very much related, but we do need the new education, the new content to conserve and to be, respect nature, and not really those kind of consumerism. I think that's internationally.
Okay, so on this point, so we're asking for a revolution. We're trying to change a lot of mindsets that is continuously reinforced from media, from what we watch. But of course, we all know that the most critical group is the youth group. Basically, the Gen Z, the Alpha. They're ones that are under 20s, and then I think the young teenagers just were brought away by their parents, saying they had something else to do. But there you are. So I was going to pose this question to our three panelists as you are teachers. Professor Jabal, you're right now actually teaching freshmen, or is it a freshman seminar? What are the types of students that choose to come to take your course to learn about Haiti? Likewise, where Yang Lao Shi, in your teaching, who are the students that are really interested to try to learn more about rural areas and to step into study an alternative career path? And also, Emmanuel, you are sitting in Tokyo. You've been in East Asia for many years. What is your feeling about what is it that we would want to to select and entice most easily those who are already interested? But what, in your experience, can help identify those students and also educate them to bring them forward as pioneers for us to have this revolution in education? Professor Jawab?
Just quickly, the students that I teach the Haiti course are freshmen. They're entering students, so they're just out of high school, so most of them are 17, 18 years old. I think the characteristic for this course is they know nothing about Haiti and they want to learn something. So this is a really good gene for someone who's a teacher to have in their students, the wanting to learn about something they don't know about. And I think this is an interesting spot because so much of our learning, like in mathematics, you learn 1 year and then you build on that the next year and you build on that the next year. This is a course where everyone starts at zero and we all start together. So you can talk about how you learn about things. But other than that, they're all different natures, April, so they're all over the maps and where they're going to go. And this is just an interesting chance for them to have a smaller course. The seminar course is designed to have entering students be able to have a small course instead of the economics course, which is the biggest course at Yale that may have 600 students in it. This is a chance to really talk to a professor and interact. But I'm curious what Emmanuel has to say also.
Right. So it's always hard to know who's going to learn what when. When I was undergraduate at Yale, I took Conrad Totman's history of Tokugawa Japan, and he stressed the Tokugawa policy for forest management. And Tokugawa Japan in the 17th, 18th century had 100, 200, 300-year plans for maintaining forests and farmland and I didn't really think about it all that much at the time. But later on in my life, I realized that this was a different model from what I saw around me, and I realized that Asia offered something not in terms of making semiconductors faster, or bullet trains, but some other concept of what the relationship between ethics, economics, and environment and energy was. And so you never know. And so we tend to, it's like the parable of the sower. I mean, you throw out the seed, and some of them will sprout up, and some of them may take a decade or two to germinate.
I also think about we should have the post-industrialized education. Yeah, I think ecological civilization, it is a very important, the direction for the future education and for the future values. In the meantime, I think the critical thinking and the system thinking through the education to train the people with the ability for the critical thinking and the system thinking is very important, especially to critical about all the practices not favorable to the sustainable development. For example, consumerism. For example, every year we have to have the economic growth, and we grow more materials, and then we encourage people to buy it and to encourage consumerism. This is not sustainable. Yeah. So people have to have this kind of critical attitude to be differentiate what is sustainable and what is not. But all those is lacking in the education right now. I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to say the dreaded words that Professor Jamal says. We only have 2 more minutes. So I'm going to give another chance for the cyber community. Quick, if you turn on your screen, if you have a question to ask. Oh, here we are. Please, go ahead. Can you turn on?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Introduce your name.
My name is Thomas Deering. I'm a physician. I live in the United States, and I've had a great opportunity to interact with the Chinese folks over the years. I typically, in my specialty, have visited China once or twice a year for 10 years and have relationships with colleagues in China in the field. And April, I'd really like to thank you for bringing together this diverse group of individuals from different geographies with different experiences. That is the explore with people who have different backgrounds, learn from them, and become better of it. I'd like to ask a quick question of maybe the faculty on, the rural healthcare considerations. It's problematic across the globe. You mentioned Gary Desir. Gary's a friend of mine. Gary and I were classmates, and we trained together, as physicians at Yale. And to make a long story short, I'm right now driving the Yale international community to try to put our alumni together to do conferences like this. So I look forward to connecting with you, April. But my question, I guess, is, rural healthcare suffers everywhere. China is only one of many countries in which this is the case. And I think there are technological advances that can help this. I've been working with a couple of folks in China about using, web-based considerations, using, telemedicine considerations, using, other components, using educational programs that are different. There's a gentleman named Greg Lipp from the UK who has worked very, very closely and developed apps to help people to take their blood pressure medicines or their anticoagulants or their medicines for seizures. So I'd like to get the perspectives on those of you in rural areas and how we can make healthcare better, by using modern technology, but not losing that personal touch, which is important for the delivery of care to individuals. Thank you, April, for allowing me to participate.
So just quickly, in Haiti, Haiti has a very well-developed cell phone network. And so that's the technology, I think, that could be used very effectively in Haiti. You could have telemedicine through the cell phone, but you can also have courses. People can download and then listen on their phone over in the evening or when they're walking to get the water to courses that talk to them about sanitation in the home. There's a lot of appropriate technology, simple hand washing machines and will filtering that people can adopt. So I think that's one of the techniques in Haiti that hasn't been used as wide. Cell phone, and cell phones, of course, are now ubiquitous all over the world. They're easy to charge with a little solar panel at the street corner. They're very cheap to buy, and so lots of information could be transferred to the rural areas that way. I think that might be one way to start in Haiti.
Okay, thank you. And it is because.
Thank you.
So thanks for that question. It's such was to my last question for the faculty team here, and then we'll close the seminar. Is that talking about technology, innovative technologies, AI, which is looming. What is your comment about using human-centered AI or technology to quicken the dissemination of education for sustainable development, this post-industrialization education model? Any responses to this question?
I'm not talking about AI.
So AI is out of the bag. There's no way of stopping it anymore. So we might as well join in and figure out how to use it most effectively. And I think probably in the sense of medicine, the previous speaker maybe could weigh in on us. We need doctors to talk. I think AI is going to be a good place to start. People had already started going to Wikipedia or online searches to get their medicine, so why not up it with a little bit more of a boost from the AI? And then we're going to need the doctors, the real people, to constantly moderate and let us know where the AI is working and where it's not working. But I don't think we can go back. We're all going to be AI aficionados soon.
Yes, my question is about how to apply human-centered AI on education for sustainable development. And okay.
Sorry, I'm not going to talk about AI. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the urban medicine because it's mentioned about the health. I start with a story. 20 years ago, I went to the Miao minority groups on the mountains, and a girl taking me down the hill, and she can tell all the herbs around her home. Okay. And she knows how to different herbs to treat a different kind of sickness. Okay, it's just marvelous. But now all the people they don't know, all those Chinese medicine anymore because it's not taught in the school. Okay, it's not being emphasized. I think that's the most effective. That's cheap and that's sustainable and that's part of the culture. Yeah, but I think we should recover and reinvent those kind of knowledge about the herb medicine. That's in all different cultures the same thing. That's not talking about AI. Yeah, it's something right in front of our house, in the field, in the forest. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the most effective health. Thank you.
Absolutely, taking things from the front. So actually. As I had my undergraduate at Yale in electrical engineering and computer science, I do believe the need to leverage technology. So, for instance, the wisdom in our indigenous and community knowledge, if we do just at least capture it, put it into our database, we could at least hope not to lose it and to be able to use with innovative technologies like AI to draw it out and maybe make it easier for people to learn or to go and tap into that depository.